and we always put the line through strong, and it's just check on your friend. Because oftentimes as leaders and coaches and being the head of certain things, we're taught that we got to keep going. Taking care of yourself outside of that space is very important because if you don't process your own grief, you either bring it into the room and now you're sharing it with everyone else.
Welcome back to Beyond the Steps, produced by Apollo Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. We are back with Damion Harmon, not your average therapist, for week 2 of our series on grief. Today, we're getting into the forms of grief that the dance world most never ever talks about. What happens when competition does not go the way you planned? Oh my goodness. We, as teachers, educators here in the middle of competition season, have experienced this so much, and now we're going into nationals. That is one of them. When a beloved athlete leaves your team, I have lots of questions about that. And when the world outside your studio walls is in pain, what in the world are you supposed to do with that when your students bring it through the door? So, Damion, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back.
So let's talk about competition grief because this one is real and I do not think we address it nearly enough. When a dancer or athlete pours everything they've got into a performance, and let's be honest, a coach and a teacher too, because we need help with it all too. When they pour everything they've got into a performance and it doesn't go the way they hoped, what kind of grief does that trigger, and why does it hit so hard when we know? Putting it in perspective, it's not the end of the world. Life will go on. Why does it hit so hard?
That's definitely a big one. Like I said, as being a former athlete, and I say once you're once you're an athlete, you're always an athlete as far as from a personality standpoint. But like you said, it's definitely a real thing. And so when like an athlete or a dancer, pours everything, whether that's practicing, whether that's diet, whether that's exercise, all the different things that an athlete needs to do to prepare to perform, and they pour everything into that thing, and it doesn't go as planned, they're not just grieving the loss, they're grieving the meaning that's attached to it, right? So the meaning could be, I thought this would prove something, right? Also I thought that this would change my life if I showed up and I got this particular reward, for my performance, or I placed number one, or if I won the competition, it would change my life. And the last one would probably be I thought that this meant I was enough. That's usually the biggest one. So when it doesn't go as planned, or something like that, or they plan to finish in the top three and they don't make the top three, what does that say about me? That means that I'm not enough, and I've worked as hard as I could, which means that I shouldn't be doing it anymore. And that's usually the thought, that because I've worked so hard and I didn't get the result that I wanted, that means that I'm not enough. And so when it falls short, it hits their identity, their worth, and their expectations all at one time. And so being able to kind of address that and process that and grieve that, again, it looks different for each athlete, but from the foundational aspect of it, as far as being a competitor and having that particular competitive nature, those are some of the things, those are some of the thoughts that they may have.
And we don't even think about that. We're always like, oh, next time. And it's like that space between this time and next time is so hard, especially for children probably who don't quite have the words and the thoughts to articulate. So that's such good advice, or good information to know that grief is not always about death. It's about change. And I have a little story about this one. I'm a competition director, and one year we were ready for the competition team meeting at the beginning of the year, and I have a room full of parents out there, and I get 5 emails back to back that tell me that 5 students are not coming back. 5, like, the parents are in the room, and I noticed that their parents weren't there, and I'm like, "Where's such and such, and where's such and such, and where's" and it's just 5, boom, boom. It's like they coordinated them to send out at the same time. And I just went in the bathroom and just fell all the way apart. Like, how am I supposed to go in here and feel good about myself, feel good about talking to these parents about this amazing program I have when I just had 5 people just say, "You're not good enough," or "We're not good enough to come back," that they were going somewhere else. So, what happens emotionally when a beloved athlete or a team member or when a studio loses students that move to another program? Like, how does grief does flow both ways from athlete to the athlete and to the people that they leave behind, right?
That's what we call relational grief. Um, what happens is you get the feeling and the sense of that you're losing a connection, with that particular person, that family, but also the routine. Like it's going to shift the room a little bit to miss those 5 individuals that you would normally have on your team. So the routine, being able to, know that you had that particular setup and then all of a sudden it shifts. It changes. It's 5 less people. So how does that change the dynamic? And who's doing what? Who's doing what particular skill? But also identity. You shaped, and curated a team, and you have certain people who have certain strengths, certain people have, just different things of that sort. So a sense of identity is lost, but also shared experience. When those people leave or that person leaves, it's like, man, like I remember when we used to do this, or we went to this particular competition. Now they're no longer going to be a part of it, and I'm gonna lose that part, that experience with that person. So yes,
Yeah, I think this is more prevalent than we realize in any situation where in you're working so many hours with children and their families, right? Like Melissa, we've talked on so many episodes about how the boundaries start to get really blurred because oftentimes you're spending more time with these people than you are in your home or with your own family, especially during the competitive portion of the season. You're traveling with them, you're spending hours in the studio, hours on the weekends getting ready. And so you start to feel like not only connected to the student, but you also feel connected to their entire family. You get to know the parents, the siblings, the grandparents, right? And so when all of a sudden you just get so emotionally invested in these families that when they're pulled away, it does feel like a betrayal. You're adjusting to all of the things you said, Damian, like the loss of that person and what they bring to the table. And but it's also sort of a betrayal of like, was I not good enough? You think of all the time you spent and all the personal connections you made, and did that mean anything to them? Right? It's just very personal and intimate in a way that is not normal in so many other industries. And I think that's very common.
and like you said, it goes both ways. So like the athlete grieves what they're leaving, right? But also the team is grieving who they lost. So in that performance culture, we often act like it's just a part of the game. It's a part of, you know, dance. It's a part of football. It's a part of basketball. Teams trade all the time and all those different things, and people are free agents and people sign with other teams, all that, and we act as if it's a part of the game, which it is, but that does not mean that it's not a loss.
I want to shift a little bit to the kind of the socioeconomic climate. So our students in general are absorbing a lot right now from, school shootings, natural disasters, political unrest, violence in their own communities. How does collective or community trauma create grief in the bodies and minds of young athletes? And what is our role as educators in holding that? Because, and I want to, before you answer, I feel like Melissa, again, we've talked a lot about how particularly coaches and directors and youth athletic, managers, I guess, they wear a lot of hats. We can become counselors and um you're expected to know therapists and lawyers and all the things, hats that we shouldn't necessarily be wearing because we're not experts in any of those fields, right? So I think that also complicates matters, is like we feel like we have to take on everything and maybe it's not always the best thing. So I'd love to hear your perspective on what is the role of the educator in all of this.
And like you said, because of social media, because of exposure, children, kids, they today they carry a lot because they see a lot. whether that's violence, whether that's, instability within the household, dysfunction, all those things, but also uncertainty. Not everyone, comes from a great background, and you never know what they're experiencing once they leave from practice and competition and all those things. So what I tend to call it is ambient grief. That's grief that's always kind of present, even if it's not tied to one specific event. It's kind of like, I don't know if I walk home, or what I'm going to be eating this evening, or the light's going to be on, or if we're going to have an eviction notice, or if a friend or a family member has been killed, or something like that. So all those things are tied, to grief, because and it's not necessarily one specific event, it's just life for them. And so that shows up also, in their body, as far as being, hypervigilant, and it may show up as anxiety for some kids. But also on the flip side, some kids, because they've experienced so much, they become emotionally numb to it, to where it does not impact them, and they're just, flatline. It's just straight. There's no happy, there's no sadness. It's just, they just show up emotionally numb. So as educators and coaches and things like that, your role, like you said, it isn't necessarily to be a therapist, but you are regulators. You're like the thermostat. Like you set the temperature for the room. So your consistency, your presence, your ability to create safety for them, that's the therapeutic side of things.
So, as coaches and teachers, Damien, we are often expected to be the stable ones, the ones who hold the space for everybody else, hold it together. What happens, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, when we're grieving too? How do we take care of ourselves while still showing up fully for our athletes and students?
And one of the phrases that I normally use, a lot of me and my colleagues, we always say, check on your strong friend, and we always put the line through strong, and it's just check on your friend. Because oftentimes as leaders and coaches, and being the head of certain things, we're taught that we got to keep going. When life happens, keep going, because I got to show up for everyone else, right? But my thing is, you can't pour from an empty cup, but you can't also disappear. So it kind of gives you this conundrum of, like, how do I find that balance? So the balance looks like you intentionally showing up, but being honest, one, within yourself, but also with the people that you're serving as well, without oversharing. So you can show up and say, hey, I'm going through something, but I'm here with you. Instead of saying I'm here for you, say I'm here with you.
Is there a point where you would recommend not showing up? Like, if you're just not able to show up in an honest way, like, is it better to just not show up at all until you can get to that place? Is there, like, a line where that becomes like, "You shouldn't be here right now," right?
And like you said, you have to be honest with yourself, right? Everyone has that line. Um, and people are understanding, right? So when you don't show up, and you've already expressed where you are emotionally, and you're self-aware, people will understand. We often take that level, uh, or that aspect of being a leader, is that you got to withstand. You got to, again, like we talked about in the previous episode, pushing through. Like, no, you're still human, right? Superman was Superman. Clark Kent was him faking being Superman, but we're Clark Kent. Like, we're Clark Kent, we're not Superman. So being able to sit within yourself and understand what you're going through, and being able to understand your barometer, your emotional barometer, where you are that particular day, and being honest with yourself. So taking care of yourself outside of that space is very important, because if you don't process your own grief, you either bring it into the room, and now you're sharing it with everyone else in a negative way. They're being emotionally impacted in a negative way by your grief, because you're not properly handling it, or you emotionally check out from it. You may show up, but you're not actually present, with them. So you can either bring it with you and carry it, with you, and have those negative emotions, or you're not going to be the same quote unquote coach. You're going to be different. So trying to find out what that balance is.
Such good information. Thank you so much. We want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced grief in competition or watched an athlete struggle when a teammate has moved on? Tell us about it. Put it in the comments. Somebody might need to hear it and have the same type of experience that you have had. Before we go to our guest resources today, we want to take a moment to share something that we are really, really proud of. The Beyond the Steps program is a resource built specifically for dancers, athletes, and educators who want to keep growing beyond this conversation. If today's episode resonated with you, please check it out. This is your next step. Go to apolloperformance.com and check out that program. You'll get information there, everything from racism to gender equity to nutrition to psychology to, of course, medicine and science. So please check it out. Damion, how can people get in touch with you?
They can get in contact with me by going to my website, The Couch Co LLC. That's TheCouchCollC.com. I have all of my information is there from my social media, which is not your average underscore therapist, as well as Facebook, LinkedIn, Damion Harmon, my government name. But also everything is available there on my website, from mental health resources to outpatient therapy to speaking engagements to even my TED Talk. So go to the website and check it out.
What about the book?
Oh yes, can't forget about the book. A loss is a loss. It's I'm not gonna say it's a monologue or anything like that, but it came off of the precipice of me doing the TED Talk. So I turned it into a book, and so it has a book, and it kind of gives you a guide on how to name your grief, the things that we normally kind of look over, and we often look at grief as death. So I wanted to kind of expound on grief and loss within that book, and I also have a workbook that's attached to it. So after you read one chapter, you can actually do the work through the workbook.
What a great resource for just studio directors and people who want to share that with their students too. So everybody go check out Damien's book and grab it. Where can people buy the book from?
The book is available on Amazon, so you can just type in "A Loss is a Loss" by Damion Harmon, or you can go to the website, thecouchcollc.com.
Thank you so much. Damion, this conversation just keeps getting richer and more important and helpful. And we're so grateful for you being here. Next week, we're closing out this guest series with one of the most important topics we have covered yet, grief after injury and what it truly means to lose your identity as an athlete. We've all seen it happen. We've all in some way experienced it. So this one is definitely going to hit differently. Do not miss it.